we could probably move on to what the code actually looks like. So like I said, I started on a Nuxt application, which means I had a ton of these already created for me. Here are some leftovers, like the Lambda folder that you need if you want to create Netlify functions. And let's continue with the layouts, where we have the default layout. I actually didn't change this much, I don't think. I probably left this untouched. Didn't change that, nor the error. So this is the default layout that comes with the Viewtify application. Didn't change anything here, but the pages only have the index, and this is where basically all the magic happens. So let me get rid of that, and this is what the application looks like. So I like Viewtify because it allows me to not have to worry about the UI items and the layouts and the things that would probably take me a lot more time to implement. But now that I know how I want it to look, so if we go back here, now that I know how the application should look like, that it has a like this on the toolbar, and that it has a timer, countdown, that we have a layout, a list for the recordings, and all of those things, little things, I'm able probably to do that on my own, but I guess in this case it's not going to be necessary. I enjoy using Viewtify to first create the layout, even if it doesn't really work, because most of the components have all you need to change their state, and all you do is bringing the view part, all the logic, all the JavaScript that will control them and drive them. So yeah, this is why I used Viewtify, like I was saying. And yeah, Viewtify has this grid system pretty similar to what you have on Bootstrap these days, with rows and columns, and then heavily based on Flexbox, where you have aligned items and justify contents and things like that. You have also a lot of utilities for the responsiveness of your applications, of your sites, if you're using Viewtify for them. So you can tell, yeah, that we're using the full width, but then when you have different breakpoints, then you start using different widths for your column. So it's going to be 4 columns or 8 columns or 12 columns, depending on the available space, basically, which is very nice, actually. This is a dialog. This is going to be the YouTube video that we embed to showcase how the application is used. And I can show you that over here. If I click here, then you see the video. This is what's showing up there. Okay. All right. And moving on, we have now the card for the actual application with a toolbar. So the toolbar is the one that will have the logo, as well as the buttons for recording and for discarding the recording. It's just one button for record and stop the recording. And then we have the discard recording button. Then the toolbar ends there. And then we have the contents of the card, where we are setting up the timer. This is the countdown, and it's its own component at this moment. And then we have the recordings list, which is a component in itself. And like I said, I tried to make it the best experience I could. So looking at the details here, if you don't have any recordings, this will happen. So yeah. Now we go into the bottom card, where you see what recording you have selected, and then same thing, fallback for when there's none. And then you'll see a couple of text fields where you need to input your data, your name, and it's just one, You input your name and then you send it. And what you do when you send is, like I mentioned before, you will store your audio file into a Firebase storage folder. Yeah, you can see how Vidify is very, very rich in components and utilities and things like that. So you can see you can use these modifiers for the color, where this will be altering the actual red color for the snack bar, and the same snack bar will be green for when success and things like that. So I really like Vidify because of that. Alright, this is the YouTube embed light component that I was mentioning, and these are our local components. Recordings list and timer will all be registered here. And here's something I'm not very proud of, because we are handling a ton of different things here that we probably shouldn't. So this might make sense to refactor into split components again, but we'll see. But yeah, so far this worked. We have a couple computed and watchers. This is your everyday view stuff. Something I wanted to mention also here is that as part of the defaults and the things that the Nuxt project gives are the prettifying or auto formatting of your code. In this particular case, we have, for example, single quotes, no semicolons, and things like that set up on the project. And I don't need to worry about that. If I were to modify the code, when I save, it formats again. So all those things work very well in between this particular editor for the format and save, and the tooling that comes with Nuxt, which is based on other stuff like ESLint or Prettier and things like that. So yeah, part of the fixes included using the lifecycle hooks to try and see if we could share the same instance of the recorder. So in this particular case, what we're trying to do is keep the recording button disabled until you actually, as a user, grant the permissions to the browser to do so. So yeah, again, little details that I really wanted to pay attention to. Again, this is going to be a little bit messy. If you pay close attention, could probably refactor into something more tidy, like all these utilities maybe. This one was an interesting one, actually. Let me talk to you about this. So whenever the recorder has done its job, as you can tell here, this is part of the API for the library. Uncomplete is part of this options object that we're gonna be using. But the main point here was that once the recorder is done with doing its job, it will give you the blob, which you can obtain the URL from. And this was something very interesting to me, because the URL contains an UID. So I used that to basically set the ID of the object I was going to push to display on the list. So hopefully that makes sense. But I thought this was very, I don't know, clever, if I say so myself, grabbing the UID from the URL on the blob. So yeah, this was fun. And yeah, you can tell I had to do a little bit of replacing the string and looking for the actual href that I was going to use. Later on, just remove everything but the UID. Yeah, this was fun. This was a very nice experience to learn that. And yeah, so at this point, I think we are actually sharing the recorder for all the instances of the list of recordings in the application, thanks to my QA engineer. That was very fun. All right, so now up to the send method, where we're actually storing stuff on Firebase. And you can see this is how we do it. Let me show you here. So the ref is going to be storage ref, which is part of the fire storage library that you can install on your project, and then that has its own API where we are setting up the folder where we want to save the file, and you can tell we are using the ID to name it. We're actually concatenating the date to create the folder if it doesn't exist, and then in that date we want to add the name that the user entered, and then finally what file it was. So yeah, that's how it works, how you store in Firestore or fire storage. What I did here is grab a hold of the reference for the storage and then just push the entire blob. And next we also have this handy hooks, I guess, where you can actually know how much of your file has been transmitted already. And in this way you can tell we are attaching that to the upload progress property on the view instance. So this way we know how long or short should the progress bar be. And I really like that. This is a very nice API to work with. And same thing, we have an error or we have a successful response from storing the file. All right. So this is why we needed the binding to the HTML, because we have an HTML output here. So that means we need to use here the HTML. And this is also the reason why you saw this ESLint disable next line thing, because if I didn't use it, then the linter will complain that this is unsafe. Right? So yeah, and it is right. You can't be unsafe if you don't know what you're doing. And I probably don't, but let's say that I do. All right. So yeah, I want to keep looking. Let's go into the components. So components, this is what the recording item looks like. Just one of the items on the list whenever you're done recording. Again, beautify with a lot of very nice things for their API and utilities and things like that to change the layout and the behavior of some of your components. But for the most part, it's just Vue. And this is what I really enjoyed about this project, that I felt like I was flying in a sense, like I was doing everything really quick, that I could express my ideas into the actual application, that I could make it happen. And this feeling of empowerment is what makes me enjoy Vue so much. But anyway, so yeah, this is basically one list item where you have, this is avatar because we need the left side to display the playback buttons, and then the content itself will be the slider. This also was a very interesting part because I never thought I would be able to implement actually the slider where it moves according to the progress of the track, but then it also has, well, the slider where you can pick it up and then change the position of the head for the player, which is also known as seeking on the track. This is why we have this name here. It was very interesting. It was a little bit of a challenge as well, but interesting nonetheless. I learned how to lay out these things because they wouldn't look good. The playback buttons and the slider itself would collide a little bit, and then the playback button would not appear complete because of this that was on the way. So I had to do a lot of trial and error until I got the right templating and the right layout working. But yeah, I know next time I need to do something similar, I will kind of know what I need to do, or at least I can come back to my project and see what exactly I needed to avoid that. And then we have the action items, which would be the download as well as the removal of the item. Yeah, a lot of playing with the idea of what I actually wanted to show. Like we could do the elapsed time or the remaining time and things like that. I settled on elapsed and the total duration. So another utility that I think I found this. Can't remember if I made it. Shouldn't take too long to make either. In any case, but yeah, I probably brought it from somewhere. So in that case, I usually do something like from and then stack overflow URL here. Because I like having the reference where I took stuff from and where I can go and see if I need more reference or more ideas on why something happened. In this case, I think it's because it was so, I don't know, straightforward. I guess I didn't add it. Or maybe I was just lazy. Okay, more stuff like the defaults for the props. And this is to actually playback. So another API that I needed to learn a little bit from. So you can use this to actually play back your items. And same thing, I learned how that worked and well, made it work. So loaded data, ended, time update, those are part of the API for the native audio objects. So yeah. And then sometimes you need or you want your Viewify application to behave or to look a particular way. And I found that to be the case for me. So I actually grabbed this, I think from the browser from DevTools and just made it happen. So yeah, I think this took a little bit of fiddling with the DevTools and trying to make it look the way I want it. But then in the end, I think it worked fine. So yeah, sometimes you need to do this with Viewify. Probably can avoid it if you change your layouts and things like that. But just so you know, you can actually do that. All right. So recordings list is the container and the parent for the repeated recording items here. And you can tell we get a recording item and we pass in whatever recording we are looping through at that point from whatever property we have on the component. So yeah, and since this is a list item group, meaning that is a list from where you can pick stuff, we are actually using this to be able to bubble up the selection to the parent component. So the parent of this recordings list, wherever this is used, you can do that. So using vmodel when implementing it, let me show you over here. We should probably have a vmodel on the recordings list. There you have it. And to be able to do this, we need to have the value prop as well as emit change whenever, or an input event, sorry, whenever you change the model that you need to expose. And let's see, what else do we have here? Not much, I think. The logic for removing is on this parent component. And I tried to make this work. I can't quite remember if it works fine. But the idea is to also make the removal smooth and not jarring as much as I could. All right. And finally, the timer component. This was interesting to me. This is one of those things that just you just have fun working on. Same thing, a couple little details here and there. Changing the color of the timer when you had 10 seconds or less, but more than 5, meaning that if you had less than 5, then you would be red on the timer. So yeah, there's that there. You can control the timer and start and stop it from the outside. This is the best approach I could think of at the moment. We have a default timer limit, but you can pass in whatever number you need. and this is going to be in seconds. Yeah, more time calculations. Yeah, what's your, your normal view stuff. Same thing for here. So yeah, it wasn't really straightforward. I had to work a lot of little things here and there, but in the end, I think it worked fine. So we're not actually using the store model. As you can tell, we didn't have anything Vuex related. And I think this is an important point to make, because not all applications need state management solutions, like external libraries that need to handle that. And I think it is really okay to do everything inside of the components and communicate them through the props. So I didn't really need to add Vuex in this particular case. And one more thing I wanted to mention is that I really needed to add tests, and I wanted to. I just haven't had the time, but I really want to do that. I'm planning on, so because I'm not very familiar with how unit testing works for Vue components, I would really like to do that, to learn and then implement that, to have a suite of tests that will cover my components. But also I am very interested in learning Cypress. I've worked with automation a little bit on my day job, but this is a whole other thing because it's based on Selenium and things like that, with wrappers on top of that. But I would really like to learn properly how to do the Cypress part and add that to this project to make sure, that I find all the flows working properly and stuff like that. So yeah, I really, really want to add tests. I just haven't done it. Okay. Other than that, I think that will be it. That is the rundown of what the project is made of, how it works internally, I guess. Maybe later on we can do the flow of how we do the deployment on Netlify and how that works, how you can actually have your project running up there. So to kind of close the video, I would say that this was a very fun project because I not only worked with Nuxt and practiced the idea of using this framework on top of Vue, but also I was able to dabble a little bit with APIs that I didn't know. I knew about them, but I didn't work with them before. So like the audio API or maybe the libraries, the external libraries and services like Firebase with their storage, and found out that it's pretty easy very quickly. You can have an application that stores stuff in there. Also the audio API to do the playbacks for the recordings over here, the actual library that I use to record and then turn that into an MP3, all those little things that added up and made me have a little bit more of experience, and that was very nice. I also had fun building or creating the logo. So yeah, overall enjoyed the project a lot. This is why I wanted to share what it was. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you subscribe if you haven't. I've noticed a very large number of people watching the videos on the channel are not subscribed. I appreciate your feedback. I don't really have a lot of comments on my videos, but the ones I do, I respond. And I thank you very much for watching and for giving me your ideas as well. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next video. I hope you have a good one. Bye.